This is a more detailed problem related to stock-based compensation, and specifically stock options, when there's been a forfeiture along the way and a little tweak in how the exercise price, where the exercise price is a percentage of the stock price on the grant date. So let's get started. It says well, before we do that, I always want to jump to that, but let's read the problem. It says on October 15, 2026, the Board of Directors of Vasan Materials Corporation approved a stock option plan for key executives. On January 1, 2027, 29 million stock options were granted, exercisable for 29 million shares of Vasan's $1 par common stock. The options are exercisable between January 1 of 2030 and December 31 of 2032 at 90% of the quoted market price on January 1, 2027, which was $20. The fair value of the 29 million options, estimated by an appropriate option pricing model, is $6 per option. Vasan chooses the option to recognize forfeitures only when they occur. So we're not going to estimate the forfeitures, we're just going to recognize them when they occur. 10%, 2.9 million of the options were forfeited when an executive resigned in 2028. All other options were exercised on July 12, 2031, when the stock's price jumped unexpectedly to $28 per share. Required. When is Vasan's stock option measurement date? And so that's going to be measurement date is going to be the day that they were granted, and that was January 1, 2027. Okay. Number 2 says determine the compensation expense for the stock option plan in 2027. 2027 stock-based compensation, and that's going to be determined as the total value total value, number of shares, number of options, and that's going to be 29 million, right? I'll make that a number here. 29 million. And don't let that exercise price mess with you. It's still going to be based upon the option pricing model of $6 per share. And that is number of fair value at grant date, $6. So if we multiply the 29 million times 6, we get 174 million total compensation expected. And we're going to divide that by 3 years, divide by years in service life, and that's 3, equals compensation expense per year. Expense per year. And that's going to be equal to 174 million divided by 3, 58 million. And so we're going to have, in a journal entry form over here, I'll put the journal entries, 1/1/27, nothing's going to happen. That's just the grant date. But on 12/31/27, we're going to have compensation expense for 58 million. and we're going to have paid in capital stock options equal to that same 58 million. This is to adjust for stock option compensation via stock options. Okay, that's 2027. It didn't ask for the journal entry, but I gave it anyway because I like to see journal entries. I love journal entries. Number 3 says, prepare the journal entries to reflect the effect of forfeiture of the stock options on Vasan's financial statements for 28 and 29. So that's really number 2, and number 3, and number 4. And so in number 3, reflect the effect of the, so now the total compensation expected was 174 million. But now what we have is 10% aren't going to occur. And so that is percentage revised percent expected, where it used to be 100%, now it's going to be equal to 1 minus 0.1, or revised total compensation is equal to the 174 million times the 90%, 156.6. That 156.6 divided by 3 years, total years, which is, there were 3 years, equals compensation per year revised. Equal 156 divided by 3, 52.2, and then years to 12/31/28. We're doing the journal entry at 12/31/28, and 2 years have gone by. So total revised compensation at 12/31/28. I'm going to have to bring this over a little bit here, and that's going to be equal to the 52,200,000 times 204 less compensation expense in 2027, and that was the 58 million, equal to this number right here, 58 million, equals 2028 compensation expense. Both the 104.4 minus the 58, and that's going to be 46.4, 28 compensation expense. I'm going to take all of this, copy it. This is the next year. And now we're going to have compensation expense is going to be equal to the 46.4. And then it asks us to do 29, and that's going to be the same thing, except now we're going to do 29. And our new compensation per year revised is 52.2. And let's try that, see if that doesn't work. And I'll check it. I like to come back and check things later. 52.2. So if we take this and we add these compensation expenses together, $156,600, and this is the revised total compensation. So we now have that total there. Okay. You can also calculate it by 156.6 revised total compensation minus the 104.4 that's been recognized up until 12/31/28. So there you have 3.4. Now prepare the journal entry to account for the exercise of the options in 2031. So now it is now, what was that funny day? July 12 of 31, 7/12/31. On that day, we're going to get cash, and the cash is going to be equal to, it says, all other options were exercised. So equal to 0.9 times 29 million times 90% of 20, 0.9 times 20. And I think, let's see if we can get that going here. That's 469,800,000. We're going to debit paid in capital, stock options, for the total of this compensation, which is the sum is equal to all these credits that we had over here. $156,600. Then we're going to credit common stock $1 par, and that's going to be equal to the 29 million times the 90% that's left over after the 10% was forfeited, 0.9, times 1. And again, that should be number 26.1. And then the paid in capital in excess of par, common. Oh, we don't even have to write that because there's no evidence of a preferred stock. And that's going to be the total of the amount that the employees invested in cash, plus the amount that they invested in their sweat equity, minus the par value, 600,300,000. And there you have more detailed stock-based compensation awards and forfeitures. This is going to be to account for exercise of 90% of the 29 million stock options. There you have it.